Hey, welcome back for Chapter 10. I'm Lloyd Dobler, and this is my podcast, The Tao of Lloyd, where I create these kind of mixtapes that duct tape the Tao Te Ching to the chaos of the Trump era, like a sticky note that says "Be kind, rewind, revolt." And in Chapter 9, last episode, I promised to read you a letter from Diane Court, and I'm going to get to that after the reading because I do want to try to connect that to Chapter 10 of the Tao. But before we listen to the reading, it is a good idea to quiet your mind. But if your mind is anything like mine, it can wander away quicker than Donald Trump when asked a direct question about the Epstein files. Suddenly he's rambling about wind turbines killing Christmas and bragging he once out-negotiated gravity, or claiming he's going to officiate the wedding of J.D. Vance and Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's widow. I mean, did you see her fingers all up in J.D.'s hair like a porn star in an Herbal Essence commercial? And with that chaotic weather pattern established in your brain, here is today's reading. Chapter 10 of the Tao Te Ching. Can you coax your mind from its wandering and keep to the original oneness? Can you let your body become supple as a newborn child's? Can you cleanse your inner vision until you see nothing but the light? Can you love people and lead them without imposing your will? Can you deal with the most vital matters by letting events take their course? Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? Giving birth and nourishing, having without possessing, acting with no expectations, leading and not trying to control. This is the supreme virtue. And that concludes Chapter 10 of the Tao Te Ching. And listen, man, this one feels personal. Chapter 10 isn't asking you to be calm. It's not asking you to unclench. It's not even asking you to relax. Can you soften? Can you ease up on your own mind? And let me connect that to the promise I made to you in Chapter 9. If you were with me last chapter, and statistically maybe you were, maybe the algorithm fed you 6 true crime podcasts before you found me again, you'll remember I said I found a letter from Diane in a box labeled important, capital I, capital dramatic irony. And I promised to share it with you. Okay, so this is the letter. It's from Diane. It was written in 2011, which I found in the quote-unquote important box in my closet when I was cleaning out this summer, or this past spring, next to a Blockbuster Eraserhead tape that I never returned, an orphaned TV remote. I found it last May, 2025. And with full disclosure, I did not handle reading this with any kind of emotional maturity. I opened it, I read it, and then I immediately started a podcast called The Tao of Lloyd. I don't know. Let me just read parts of it, and I'll summarize some other parts of it. It was long. It starts, Lloyd, this is strange, I know. I haven't written to you in a long time. And then she goes on, I'm paraphrasing here, about being in a hotel lobby in D.C. and the TV was on and she wasn't really watching until suddenly she says, I saw you being led away by the police at a protest in New York. Okay, so she's talking about Occupy Wall Street. Yeah, that was a year. I was there. Anyway, she keeps writing, and this is the part I'll read out loud because it did knock the wind out of me the first time, and, the second and 10th time. She writes, "It startled me not because you were in trouble, but because you were still you. Still you." Now, I sat with that for like 3 days. And by sat, I mean I spiraled. Then she had this paragraph, I'll summarize it, where she says, "Everyone in her adult life is strategic and careful and calculating, and I was the only person she ever knew who lived by conviction without cynicism." Oh, she didn't know me, honestly, because I was pretty cynical and angry at the time. Not like the cool, calm, well-collected, and well-adjusted adult I am now. But honestly, it sounds like the kind of thing someone says right before they tell you that you're exhausting. But then she continues in the letter. She says, "Lloyd, seeing you reminded me abruptly and inconveniently that you weren't a phase. You were a person who believed things could be better and acted like that belief mattered." The irony isn't lost on me here. I'm the guy who once said I gave her my heart and she gave me a pen. So finding an actual letter written in actual pen from her in a box of things I definitely should have thrown out years ago felt like the universe handing me a metaphor so obvious I needed to sit down and breathe into a paper bag. Okay. 20 years of silence, and she still cared if I made it out of that moment alive. And listen, this is important here. The letter didn't make me miss her. I didn't miss her. It made me miss me, the me she saw, the me I stopped being, if I'm honest with myself. I'm not doing this podcast to impress Diane. I'm not trying to win anything or anyone back, but because he, maybe the younger person of me, was a better person than the me who almost threw the letter away. Besides, if you listen to episode 7 of season 1, you know Diane isn't much impressed with this podcast at all. That letter I just read to you was from 2011. She wrote me an email this summer after I, in season 1 of this podcast, imagined the death of Donald Trump and wrote his obituary. Maybe that was jumping the shark a little too soon. But either way, that's how we got here. Season 2, Chapter 10, this podcast, this whole thing. Because after I read that letter last May, this past spring, I realized that I wanted to revisit that version of myself again. Not to recapture the anger that I felt in every cell of my body in the Battle of Seattle days and in my Occupy Wall Street days, because they were filled with so much rage, but to revisit that person now that I've been, on a little bit of a spiritual path stumbling, because the Tao feels like a guide rope, a way back or forward or sideways or whatever direction isn't despair. Okay? So yeah, that's what started this whole thing, trying to marry some qualities of who I was when I was younger and some qualities of who I'm becoming, the past and the future. And as Ram Dass says, right in the here and now. Okay, so if chapter 9 was the do your job and go the fuck home chapter 10 is the stop trying to be the foreman of your own nervous system chapter. Because listen, when Diane wrote that letter in 2011, she did not know that 12 years later I would open it to read it again in what can only be described as a psychological yard sale. She didn't know I'd be sitting cross-legged on my floor surrounded by 17 piles labeled with things like keep, trash, and don't know what this is but feels important, and emotional hazmat. She didn't know that that one sentence, you were still you, would hit me like a Zen koan delivered by someone who knows exactly where your soft underbelly is. And I know, we're supposed to have outgrown our high school selves. But history isn't linear, it's cyclical. And apparently my high school self got cryogenically frozen inside that VHS copy of Eraserhead, just waiting for the right humidity conditions to thaw out and ruin my day. Because this is where chapter 10 really kicks my ass. Because Lao Tzu asks, can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? And I've been stepping back, but my honest answer is no, not yet. I mean, absolutely not. My mind is still sometimes like a toddler with a Fisher-Price weed whacker. If I step back, it accelerates. But here's the thing. For one instant, reading that letter, I did step back just long enough to see the version of me she was talking about. And that's when chapter 10 whispered something deeply and deceptively simple. Can you soften? Which sounds so small, so harmless. But if you grew up male in America, let me tell you, softening could be the hardest motherfucking thing that you ever try to do. Rage, that's easy. Cynicism, free 2-day shipping. Performative detachment, please. I've majored in that shit. But softening, opening your chest cavity like, hey, world, take a swing. That's terrifying. Which is why, if I'm honest, and why not, I didn't start this podcast to teach anything. I started it because I needed some witnesses. Here's the wild part. The letter from 2011 wasn't trying to fix me. It wasn't even about me, really. It was Diane talking to a ghost, a version of Lloyd she glimpsed on TV for 6 seconds, getting arrested at a protest. Someone she used to date. But in 2025, that ghost tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, I'm still here. Want to try again? And the Tao in chapter 10 says, giving birth and nourishing, having without possessing, leading and not trying to control. This is the supreme virtue. Which I translate as, can you care without colonizing? Can you help be of service without it being performative? Diane's letter made me realize something I had forgotten. The soft parts of me weren't weaknesses. They were the parts that kept me human. And if I don't soften, if I don't unclench the death grip on my own mind, I become another rigid thing in a rigid country. And rigid things break. Soft things bend. Soft things survive. Soft things sometimes transform. Good. Okay. Let's keep going. Hopefully somewhere in that word salad, something emerges that resonates. From the edge of the empire and the center of self, this is the Tao of Lloyd.